YouTube channel. I am Jacob Collins. You probably know me from iRacing IndyCar content on the P1 Broadcasting channel. I'm a driver for Rogue Racing, a up and coming prominent community IndyCar team, as we probably like to say. And this is kind of a channel introduction to myself, where I've kind of come from racing wise, even in and off the sim. It's meant to be kind of a casual introduction here. I've got like some notes written down, but I'm not really committed to a timetable or anything with what I'm going to say here. But if you've talked to me before, I kind of just ramble on things for a really long time. So that's what this kind of is. It's kind of getting an idea of, where I'm coming from, where I'm trying to go, the intentions for this channel, kind of where I want to see things go for me, and all the fun stuff that kind of comes with being a internet personality. As I will be an internet micro celebrity in some fashion. I don't expect this to turn into anything crazy, but I figured it was a good outlet for me to kind of condense my talking of shop, as people coined it to me, into a bit more of a focused medium. So I will be doing that here, and I hope you enjoy and appreciate what I've got going on here as I kind of step my way into this journey. So I'm just going to be kind of flashing between some browser tabs, the iRacing UI, some other things, just talking through stuff. So if you don't need if you don't want my spreadsheets and my goofy stat application and all the other stuff that I'm going to kind of be flashing around here on your screen, you could probably just minimize this and listen to it, because that's the bulk of the content here. But so to start things off, you kind of got to start with before I was around, because before me, my dad and his dad raced off-road trucks around various tracks throughout the Midwest. The one we like to talk about every time we drive through Lake Geneva is they built like some giant fancy housing neighborhood out in Lake Geneva, basically where the old Lake Geneva off-road track was. You can still see like in some spots where like some of the fence lines were, and where some of the track uh, pieces would have been when it was still dirt and not covered in grass. Um, so that's kind of where racing came in for me. Obviously, when I came around, the story I get told all the time is that I learned to count from NASCAR cars as a kid. Your little 164 diecast cars. So that's how I learned to count as a kid. So that was a big thing for me. I grew up in Wisconsin. I still live there. I live in the same house I grew up in. I'm in the fortunate situation I am. So that's kind of where I've lived out my wildest dreams, if you will, from the heartland of the Midwest. But so the off road truck stuff is kind of how I got into racing from my dad, obviously, and then from there, uh, you know, uh, I got a go kart when I was 5, because that's typically like the youngest you can get into karting at is like 5. Some places will do 4. Just kind of depends on where you are and what the rules are. But so I got a kart when I was 5. It was numbered 5 appropriately. That's how I ended up being a Kyle Busch fan early on in his career, because my number was his number, at least to start anyway. And then so I did that from about 2005 to 2013, at least initially. We'll get back to that a bit later. But mostly club level stuff. Did a couple regional level events when they still had a lot more regional touring stuff in the Midwest, or in like the Midwest Wisconsin area. I did some of that. I've had the honor and the privilege of racing both the road course and the oval at Milwaukee, as well as the kart track and the proper 4 mile track at Road America, when they still had the WKA sanctioned Road America Super Nationals. I can confidently say I am a race winner at Road America, even though I was the only competitor in my class. Because typically with big track kart races, they do multi-class. So I was the only entry, and I believe it was probably novice animal or something like that. I have pictures of me like sitting on the pit lane in my cart with my helmet on and stuff. So it's just one of those cool things that I can point at, and it's one of the many grandkid stories, as people like to say, where it's just like stuff you're gonna tell your grandkids about, of all the fun stuff you did when you were growing up and figuring out life and what have you. So I've had that. I've been to a couple other tracks throughout the Midwest, through karting. Blackhawk Farms is one. Later on, when I got back into karting after college, because I had some health stuff in high school, and then college, I was focused on college. So then after that, I got myself a proper road racing cart. Because prior to all this, I only had one. I had recorded one like club level win in karting beforehand, and then when I came back to it, I've picked up like a couple regional level things to the now defunct Championship Enduro Series. So I've been able to race at tracks like Mid Ohio, Groton, Gingerman, and the by far the probably the most outstanding recent motorsports facility to open in the United States, Ozarks International Raceway. They call it the roller coaster. I don't remember just how much elevation change it has, but it's a lot. It's probably the closest kart racing can get to a track like Road America right now, in terms of just how much up and down there is, top to bottom. A lot of really fast corners. It's very well thought out from a track construction standpoint, because they have clay curbs that are basically smooth until like the outer like 3 or 4 inches, and then they get like the ripple in them, so you can really ride the curbs. They know you're going to do it anyway, so they might as well make it, not totally a pain in the butt to do. So so I have a background in real racing. Obviously, alongside that, I played tons of sim racing titles over the years. The notable one for me, because I had a GameCube growing up as a kid, so I didn't get like a ton of the stuff that would have came in between, because I had like a GameCube and then I had like a PlayStation 3, and that would have been like, because I had a Wii in between that, right? So there wasn't a ton of sim racing stuff that came to the Wii. But so Thunder '03, NASCAR 2011, I played those. Gran Turismo 5 and 6, the F1 games from like 2011 to 2016, played a good bit of those. And then the I basically made the transition around F1 2013 to the PC side of things, because that would have been about when I got like an actual proper gaming computer to do. I think, well, at the time it was to play World of Warcraft, right? But everybody's kind of got their one title that they jumped to PC for, and that was the one for me. I'd been playing WoW since 2009, right towards the end of the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, so I at least got to live through like the proper final glory days of that game. Obviously, I've gone back and played Classic when they did the 2019 re-release. I've played basically every expansion since then. Some more than others, but that's not what this video is about. I'm happy to talk shop on that too, but I haven't touched WoW as much as I probably should have. Whatever. So I basically got to PC, did F1 2013. F1 2016. I don't think I ever played 2014 or 15. I like skipped a couple, but I was playing Project Cars and Project Cars 2 on the PC, because I think up until I got to PC, I wasn't playing on a steering wheel yet. So it was like the F1 games, I guess Dirt 3. I played a lot of Dirt 3 too. Played Dirt Rally, obviously, Dirt Rally 2, both of those. So I played a good amount of other titles. I've dabbled in Assetto Corsa, dabbled in Automobilista 2. I've tried pretty much all the titles on the market. But come around 2017 or so, I made the plunge on iRacing, and more or less that's been the only racing sim I've played past that point. Because I subscribed like November of 2017, which would have been my senior year of high school. So then from that point, I did like a number of street stock races. I'm going to just kind of start with 2017 here. So I did rookie street stocks. I ran a number of races at Charlotte, right? As everyone did at that time, right? Nothing stellar here. My best finish of second was all I had. It's still new. You're trying to figure it out. This would have probably been my first introduction to like oval racing on a wheel with other people and stuff, because I hadn't done a ton of online stuff on any of the other titles I played, except for maybe Gran Turismo. But a lot of that was just like supercars at Daytona, right? I had a Ferrari Enzo that could wrap the double yellow better than anything, and nobody could pass me, and that was my ticket to fame there. So I started on iRacing, kind of worked my way through the license classes. My progression path at the time for all the licenses was kind of a relic of its era, I would like to think, but I don't think is necessarily as much the case as I'd like to say that is. Um, so like 2018 came around, I did a couple races here and there, street stocks. I tried that out. I wanted to try dirt because that was, I think, relatively new at the time. Um, PCC, Legends, stuff that you just had on your iRacing account. I don't think I had bought any content by this point. Come like 2019 or so, that becomes more the case, right? You run more rookie stuff. You'll see I'll have starts in trucks and like the ESS in the LMP2, which at the time which would have been the HPD. So my road racing career was basically rookie Mazdas, PCC, advanced Mazdas, LMP2. And I want to say when I bought the LMP2, I bought it alongside Motegi and Suzuka, and I have like a or a rookie division time trial certificate or something for finishing third overall or something goofy like that. I don't know if it's time trial or race. I'd have to look. We'll get to that. But that's like kind of my very, very odd progression path on the road side of things. Ovals, it was street stocks. I don't necessarily remember how I got out of D license on oval. I want to say it was like time trials. I think I did a crap load of time trials to get to C license, so then I could run more street stocks and truck. Because I want to say the way I got promoted from C to B was truck at Kentucky and Lime Rock Park. Because at the time, I want to say they still counted it as an oval license race because it was an oval license car at a road course. So it was, if you've come onto the service in the last couple years or even the last year or so, you wouldn't know that would have been the case. Maybe I have road series wins or like road license wins that are like IndyCar at Iowa, right? We'll get into that too. So yeah, I basically trudged through the license classes really fast. Dirt oval, I went and did sprint cars, as you'll see. Because I picked up Williams Grove and Kokomo alongside the sprint car around at the same time, so you'll see that here too. Nothing super super crazy here, as you'll see so far. I have yet to record a single iRacing win. This comes to the start of 20 or towards the end of 2019 here. We work into 2020. This is kind of the era in which I started dabbling into more different things. You'll see I have run some ARCA here. I was temporarily the community manager for Super Late Model at a point in time because I was one of the few people that was kind of active in the forums for that. So I did like a schedule or two for Super Late Model back in the day. I want to say that one of those we threw around the idea of Lime Rock Park. That was kind of a fun one that we tried. That's something that I think they're trying to bring back. I think I saw something float around that. But as you'll see, I have one win in the wins column on here. ARCA, Old Phoenix, wire to wire from the pole. I clobber a car down the backstretch, got a 4X. The guy was just parked in the middle of the track. I just probably plowed through him, didn't realize he was there or if he was going to stop there or what. It's early days. I think that was the race I hit 2,000 iRating on, so that's like forever ago for me. At least, statistically speaking, we'll also get to that when we kind of hop into the iRating chart at some point. But, I'm kind of still trying to figure out what clicks and what doesn't for me. You'll see I've got some more street stocks and sprint cars and whatever else. This was kind of my experimental phase with figuring out what I wanted to do in the sim, like what I felt was good for me to race, what I enjoyed racing. Because I had never really had just the plethora of options. Because like a lot of your other titles, it's like they got GT3 cars and maybe some other stuff. The Project Cars 2 stuff I was big on, like the Formula Renault 3.5. like the Formula A car. I think I had the lap record at Zolder or something at one point. But it's one of those things with like with iRacing, you just have so many options. You got to kind of figure out what clicks for you, and I think that's one of the big things that I kind of want to focus on with this channel as well. Um, so bouncing off of that, I take a hiatus in 2021 entirely because I believe that was my graduating year from college. Um, got a bachelor's degree in computer science and applied mathematics. Um, so there's that, and that was kind of the um, the start of that. So this is where we start getting into a bit more of like when I start really locking in on iRacing, right? I'll kind of use this as a bit of a more focalized version of this. So I around this time would have been so this would have been the end of 2021 going into 2022 because the season numbers are weird on iRacing. So this would have been late like December 2022 or 2021, sorry. So I started off kind of just doing whatever I kind of clicked off for me. Um, you'll see that the I start actually picking up some solid results here. So I start off with I pick up a win in the Legends car at Nashville Mini, the fairgrounds, the little mini oval. I make a last lap pass coming into turn one, dive it, send it real deep. I don't think I made contact. If I remember correctly, I might have the replay saved, and we might get to that later. But the so I did a season. The first season I did that was like a full-time season for me, which is what this page shows as like full-time seasons. Is I did Legends, I did USF 2000, and I did the TCR, which I think would have been relatively. I think they had. This is when they introduced the Honda, I believe, because if I look here, yeah, this was when they introduced the Honda in Knockhill. So, and I believe, yeah, that was also used on the USF schedule at the time, and that's why I raced it. But this is where I got started there. You'll see I picked up a win at Watkins Glen Boot. I don't actually have record of my first iRacing win on video anywhere or like on replay. It was PCC at Lime Rock Park, the old layout, the old scan with the chicane. So that's a layout that will unfortunately no longer exist. So even if I had the replay, I'd be no longer able to view it, which kind of sucks. But I'll have to. I'm sure we'll get to the ARCA race at some point because that's a good one. But I'm gonna kind of work my way through this introductory year for me because this was kind of when I was feeling out some more stuff. Season 2, I did PCC, TCR again, and then USF 2000 again. Picked up another win in USF. There will be a lot of these. As you'll kind of see as we go in here. If you've talked to me, you know my love for the USF 2000. But IndyCar, the Open Series, because at the time there was not like a fixed sprint. There was just oval fixed. I picked up 2 wins in that coming into season 3. One of them at Iowa, the other one at Charlotte. Charlotte, I led all but one lap. It was 132 of 133. It was like a midnight split late at night. But yeah, just a lot of open wheel stuff. I tried kind of some more goofy stuff with the TCR. Kind of rolling into the end of 2022. Kind of wrap that up with USF 2000 and Production Car Challenge again. This would have been the season I had attempted to run Indy Pro 2000 for the first time, but I couldn't find a race at Daytona, so that's why it's not on here. But that was kind of the plan going into that season, and that is kind of just the tip of the iceberg, kind of the tipping point for me with getting more into iRacing on the whole. I think the biggest thing with like kind of the introductory period was kind of getting a feel for, you know, what felt like a good sticking point or a good bouncing board for me, trying to kind of get an idea of what I want to be doing here, right? Because obviously my background's in karting, so the open wheel stuff is a bit more appealing to me, which kind of reflects in the overall progression for me. As we kind of get into 2023, uh, this is when I start getting more focused, I guess, where it's like I'm kind of trying to nail the combo or two that I'm sticking with. If we go, I did a lot of other random stuff through 2022, all sorts of whatever. Um, but if we go into 2023, it's likewise kind of all over the place. But I think okay, we're gonna ignore that. I thought that was gonna be more helpful than it was, but it's not. So kind of going past that, I made the jump to 87s because I think those would have been relatively new at the time. Those were a good amount of fun. Started 2023, ran GR Cup. That would have been relatively new at the time as well, I believe. So it's a lot of modifieds. 2023 was kind of the year of the modified for me. My roommate, me and my roommate from college ran Tour Modified and SK, or mostly Tour Modified, but a little bit of SK Modified over the course of that year. You'll see I have a fifth place overall and a seventh place, so like a couple top 10 runs in points for the Tour Modifieds between the Open and the Fixed Series. I didn't do a ton in terms of setup work on the Open side of things, so it's basically just running fixed sets and Open, which for the most part you could get away with, at least at the time. I don't know if that's still the case, but probably not. But so there's that. I enjoyed that quite a bit at the time. I picked up a couple wins, one at USA and one at Southern National in the Tour Modified over the course of that time. So I have a couple wins in that car. It's probably up there in terms of one of my favorite like NASCAR cars. It says NASCAR in the name. It's a NASCAR series at the end of the day, but that or like the super late model are probably like if I had to go back to like a short track car, it'd probably be one of those two. The late model stock doesn't really appeal to me, and I never, yeah, I think that's really it in terms of not rookie stuff anyway. But so yeah, we did tour modifieds for a while. That was kind of the focus point of 2023. A little bit of IMSA towards the end. Ferrari Challenge, did ARCA, so those were all like kind of the steps there. Just trying to get a feel for what's out there. ARCA was good fun. This would have been on the old ARCA car still because this was a couple years ago. The new ARCA car basically just came out last season, or I guess this season. Jumpy trucks, that'll kind of become the thing. I obviously with my dad doing jumpy truck stuff, and we have Crandon in the sim, so that's that's cool because I've been there. I went there once as a kid, but so there's that. There's TCR, more TCR. I went back and did TCR because this is kind of getting into 2024. End of 2024, I did TCR and Xfinity because this would have kind of been like a lame duck season in terms of just what I was racing, right? Because like 2023, towards the end of it was like I'm gonna do a bunch of weird, goofy stuff. I think me and my roommate from college decided to do Ferrari GT3 at the time because I think they were running like 2 weeks of Monza, maybe. No, I think it was just a number of free tracks, right? Yeah, something like that. In either case, that was kind of that. We move into 2024. This is when things start getting a bit more concrete for me because I have a bit more of an organized record of what I was doing. So this 2024 season 2 would have been the return of the IndyCar license to iRacing. If you're unaware that there was a kind of a year, or I don't know if it was quite a full year, but it was at least 6 months or so, 6 or 9 months, something like that. Basically, the entirety of 2023, there was no branded IndyCar on iRacing. You could not broadcast races from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in an IndyCar from anywhere but the cockpit view. It was a whole thing. There's YouTube videos all over the place about it if you need to go back for that. So this was the start of kind of the tipping point for my iRacing career on the whole. If we kind of, I'm I'm gonna probably pull up. Well, I'm gonna start with this. Right. This is the season where it's like this is the transition point from where I was before to where I'm kind of focused up now. Um, we've got Tour Modified, IndyCar Oval Fixed, the new fixed sprint series for this season because this was like a big thing that they added or whatever. USF 2000. I've basically run at least one USF 2000 race ever since 2022 season one. Every season I've run at least one. Most seasons I've run full seasons of it because I can run most of the tracks and really love racing the car, obviously. Um, but this was the season I did like the Master of All, right? It was run one in every license discipline, but I overkilled it because I ran two oval and two Formula Series. But then TCR one last time, I think. I don't think I did another season of TCR after this. But then the newly introduced Millbridge Micro Showdown, which was nothing but outlaw micro sprints at Millbridge for a whole season, just alternating what wing configuration they were in, and then Pro 4 fixed because jumpy truck. So this season, I recorded a staggering 139 races. Now some of these are league sessions, so this is like slightly off because I ran the DG10 Toyota 86 League. But this was kind of the start of like I am doing the iRacing thing much more intently than I kind of had been. It was mostly just something I did to like, you know, do with my friends everyone or like do with my friend or my roommate from college every once in a while. I wasn't clicking off anywhere near as many races prior to this as this. Like I can almost guarantee you that. I don't have statistics prior to this, but I can pretty much assure of that. So here's kind of the results of that. First season, I had some solid points runs amongst the various series. You know, this is a while ago, so some of my division ranks are a lot lower, but top 10 in fixed sprint, IndyCar, almost top 10 in USF 2000. This was my first season of IndyCar Oval Fixed, so I was 37th. Because I came into IndyCar at around like 3,800 iRating from the short track side of things, and obviously I did modifieds this season, so there was a bit of a fluctuation there. I remember taking myself out basically at South Boston, last corner, last lap. I was running third, got trapped on the high side, and just pinched myself and spun myself into the wall. Richmond, I got dumped, so that didn't do me any favors. I only ran literally these 8 races you see here that season because it was kind of just we're going to run the slot and deal with it and move on. So I didn't do too great there. Tour Modifieds has kind of gotten dumpy from what I understand talking to people, but again, we'll kind of move on that. But so this was like the transition point because this was also the return of the IndyCar iRacing series because we have IndyCar now. Take a drink here real quick. So I did that. I almost got discouraged from running the whole series because I ran the opening slot of IIS at Auto Club. If you know, you know. But the tire rule got botched because they thought the track was Long Beach or something like that. So, but this was kind of the start of it all. If you've kind of seen my profile expand, this was kind of where it started as I made the transition to IndyCar stuff. That became the bigger focus moving forward as we kind of transitioned into season 3, IndyCar iRacing series, non-wing micro sprint because this was the one season they goofed and made that a D-license series instead of a rookie series. USF 2000 again. I did skip Barber this season because I was like that. I think I bought that for the 15th anniversary thing they did a while ago and just wanted to race it. There's that. So yeah, I was doing non-win micro with my roommate from college. That was our shared series this season, and I ran Outlaw Micro again because it had the 8 tracks that I could run because I didn't own Kern or Chili Bowl yet. But same deal here. 8th overall in fixed sprint, 17th overall in oval fixed. This would have been kind of the point at which, so I believe so this would have been the season right after Iowa that I got contacted to join Rogue Racing. the team with myself, Kyle Clenworth, Ryan Campbell, Antonio Estrada, Ty Keela, uh, Cody Cavaco, Jesper Orman, Hunter Engrave, Blaze Andrich, Andreas Ike. If I missed your name, I'm sorry, but I think that's everybody that's officially on that roster now. I think we're like a 7 to 10 car operation depending on the week. Just given schedules and stuff. So it was this race here at Iowa. The next day, I get the call up that's like, hey, are you interested in running with a team? This is who we've got. At the time, it was Kyle, Ryan, Tony, and Ty. I was the fifth man, if you will. Um, so we were all in this race at Iowa, and I caught somebody's attention in my plain white car, and here I am running IndyCar with some of the best to do it. I want to say this is this the season I scored the pole at Gateway? I'm gonna guess it was, but this might not have been the race for it. Let me see. Can I find that one? Where is it? No, is it not it? No, it is. It is. It's this one, right? No. Okay. Well, there was some gateway race that I famously was like the 18 car of 18 scored the pole one of these seasons. Might have been season 2 actually. Now that I think about it, possibly. Either case, um, I did all right everywhere else, but that was kind of the big deal that season was getting onto the road racing squad. Working with those guys ever since. I don't remember. I think it was basically effective the week after that I was on the roster. So Talladega, yippee. But I put up some solid results that season. Moved up the points up to 17th from like 30 something, 37th. So I gained 20 spots in the points. Had an incident-free season based off my summary tally. I'm sure I had some incidents, races that aren't on this list, but this is just the best of the weeks. I skipped Vegas that season because it was like the weather changed like 4 times or something. Whatever. Uh, but so that's kind of the big deal there. The rest of the stuff isn't super noteworthy. You'll see that from I move into the top 10 in USF 2000. We're kind of just hanging out everywhere else. I picked up a Division 2 second place in Outlaw Micro that season. Some solid points pickups there. Overall 14th, which moves me from 14th, like 27th to 14th. So we're picking up. We're getting better, becoming a bigger fish in smaller ponds. I guess it's probably what's happening there. But yeah. So the big thing here is IndyCar. I ran pretty much every week of the IndyCar iRacing series at this point. I want to say the only week I didn't opt to run past that point was Nashville. So yeah, I didn't run Sebring, Belle Isle, and Nashville. Those were my drops. Finished at the top 50 in points in my debut season in the IIS, especially considering I hadn't really driven the IndyCar prior to that, and obviously I wasn't setting the world on fire any of the weeks really, aside from surviving at a lot of the races, Long Beach, the Indy Oval, Mid-O. I think Mid-O was probably my highlight that season. Top 10, top split. But yeah, as we kind of move into the subsequent seasons, this is when we get to kind of the step beyond, if you will. So as you'll notice, from season 3 to season 4, I go from just yeah. So I move up a bit more in oval fixed. We're kind of working our way through there, learning the tracks, learning the car at the time. It was still a lot of learning, especially working with the team, having those guys kind of be able to bounce ideas off of navigating just the tumultuousness that is the IndyCar series on ovals. Top 5 fixed sprint points. I won the USF 2000 championship for the first time. That's kind of what that at the time felt like my crowning achievement on iRacing. The competition for that was pretty stiff. Me and Chase Cabry more or less went down to the wire for it. After securing some big points at Homestead and Oswego, that kind of locked it up for me. But I put up a solid result at Road America, which is the only non-podium finish on that list you'll see. It's just a whole thing. It was a big deal for me. I felt like it was, even if the competition was like, a couple guys, that's kind of what every series boils down to, is you got maybe a half dozen people that are really competing for the championship at any given time. But that was a big one for me. It was my debut season running Indy Pro as well. Sam Carosella, I thank you. I've enjoyed running Indy Pro now that I know when the races are. I got clapped at Barber prior to this at some point, and I wanted to figure it out. So finished fourth in points, picked up 2 wins, one at Gateway over James Watson. Shout out to him. That was a fun race between me, him, and Alexander Wesley Hazelworth at Gateway. I lucked into the win at Motorsports because I was the car running third due to an unfortunate late race crash between Sam and Everett Paddock. I just capitalized and was the car that lucked into that one. So those are kind of the highlights there. This would have been the introduction to the Legends Road Cup series, which I've been running ever since. It's a lot of fun. Highly recommend. But you know, that's kind of that. If we go back here, if we're just looking in terms of like races run, I only ran 93 races in 2024 season 3. It's the lowest I've ran in a season since the IndyCar license introduction, subsequent season 157. This was the season of the SCCA runoffs, which I finished 7th in the broadcast race. Got waxed basically the entire broadcast. If you go onto the iRacing YouTube channel and search up the SCCA broadcast and watch the USF 2000 race, that's, again, it was a big season for me. Chase Cabry won that race and lost the championship. So I won the championship but lost the big race to the guy that I was battling for the championship with. So, I think that says a good amount of just the consistency I had to be able to do that. And yeah. So that we're transitioning into 2025, 174 races run. A lot of racing. Oval fixed, top 10 in points. This is my first top 10 in points. I fought back in USF 2000. I could not defend against, I think Bruno Vitorino won the title that season. This would have been last season because we're still in season 2 right now. It's weird, week 13. I've kind of honed in Road to Indy. I finished second in the Pro 2000 points because the 2 guys that finished in points ahead of me in points the season prior basically retired from the car. This season would have been the season I took over the reins as the community manager for the Road to Indy, which I'll get into later. It's a lot of good stuff that comes out of talking with those guys, kind of just running races, having fun. The post Indy Pro 2000 Strength of Field GeoGuessr has apparently been a good time from what I've heard. So that's fun. That's been introduced to the series. But I did some more dirt. I picked up the dirt stuff partway through the season because I was kind of disappointed because I was planning on running IndyCar Open. You'll see I have that down here at the bottom. I was planning on running a full season IndyCar Open. Just I don't have the stuff to hang with the big dogs running the strength of field races for that. My iRating is too high relative to what my setup and car skill is, I guess. I can't hang. So we recorded a top 5 in Outlaw Micro that season. That was kind of a bigger focal point, I guess. I nearly won a 4,000 strength of field dirt oval race. I did win a 3,000 strength of field dirt oval race. It's my highest strength of field win on iRacing. Just ahead of that Oswego race that I won in USF the season prior at like 28-20 strength of field. It was another season of development. Finished top 10 in Legends Road Cup points. You'll see that I've kind of stuck to a very narrow car pool in terms of what I'm running consistently, and I think that that's something that, while the pool of drivers is smaller, I think the competition's just as fierce, and that's what makes a lot of this stuff really fun when you can start recognizing the names that you're up against all the time. Um, and yeah, so then we hop into this last season. This last season's still technically ongoing, but it's ended. I've won the USF 2000 championship again. I only ran 8 weeks. I did not. I dropped the other four. I goose egged the rest of them, for better or for worse. It's because of the unfortunate nature of the series. The last 2 weeks struggled for participation, and I wasn't super keen on racing at that point because I kind of knew I had it locked up at this point. Kind of sucks. I wish it would have gone down to the wire again. I only ran the one oval round at IRP, which is a bit frustrating. USF 2000 on oval isn't particularly great. I think that mostly boils down to the low horsepower and the fixed setups being really tight. Um, Eighth place in Legends Road Cup, ninth place in oval fixed. Was probably gonna finish as well as seventh. I just made mistakes at Phoenix and Iowa. Results be kind of falling back. This has gone on way longer than I thought it would, but I just think it's just interesting to kind of see the progression, right? Working my way through all the stuff I've kind of worked towards, and we'll hop into the sheet for this season, kind of just as a easy way to get an idea of where I've come from, where I'm going. The top of the pylon's kind of been the stuff that was what's the focus point, right? Is like the stuff that I'm putting the most time and effort into. Logging consistent laps, making good finishes, just being smart with it. It's the stuff that you find at the top of this sheet, right? USF 2000, Indy Pro 2000, the IndyCar Fixed Sprint, Outlaw Micro, Tour Modified, all the Legends stuff, Oval Fixed, SK Mod, jumpy trucks, but those are like unpopular. Let's just say it's this stuff, right? So I think it's really important to be able to lock in and focus on things, but I think it's also really important to acknowledge that there's strength in diversifying your pool, right? You'll see that I'm driving very distinctly different cars a lot of the time. The Legend car is only so similar to a Formula car. That's only so similar to a TCR. That's only so similar to a jumpy truck, whatever, right? There's something to be said for coming to grips with a lot of different machinery, and I think that's been a big boon to my career. So, as I've mentioned kind of throughout this, I'm the community manager for Road to Indy. I do the scheduling, kind of talk to people, get an idea of what we want to do for track selection, kind of interface with the iRacing staff as to what we can or cannot change, sort of deals. So that's kind of been the shoes I've filled in. Obviously, I do the stuff with my roommate from college. We're going to do Legends Road Cup again this season. Will probably be the unfortunate last season we do together on iRacing because he's hotly anticipating the new NASCAR game. It's probably going to move on to that over either continuing on iRacing, which is understandable. It's an expensive place to be, and if you're not enjoying the fullest extent of it, just, there's other places to get your driving fix. We'll just have to see how that game kind of shapes up. I'm curious to try it. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of other people are too. But so there's that. Obviously, I've done some of the broadcasting for P1. With Gary Godso and Mark Murphy between Open and IIS, and I think I did an AMA truck race with Mark at Atlanta. So I'm kind of all over the sim now. I've got a lot of hats that I kind of wear now. I'll be doing the Monday night IndyCar Open strength of field broadcasts on P1 this season every week. Kyle Clenworth wants to drive every week, get better at the road courses, figure things out, get his iRating to the point where he can hopefully make the top split, and we can watch him, solidify himself as a top of the pylon, or however he wants to get himself up to. I think it'll be really cool to see him kind of progress on the road side of things where he hasn't spent as much time. So I guess ultimately at the end of the day, what's my goal here, right? Obviously I have a lot of real world. I have real world racing background. I wouldn't say a lot, but I have real world racing background. So I think that kind of contributes to my view of how things kind of incorporate into the sim, how I handle things, conduct, stuff like that. I think it's important to treat it as if you're doing it for real, and that sending the car into the fence at 200 miles an hour is a cost, is potentially to you and yourself, even if it genuinely it isn't actually. It's just a kind of a guiding principle for me. Obviously this video is wildly too long for an intro video, but I felt like kind of covering my background and my journey through iRacing has been important. And we'll kind of hop back to the page that I had shown at the start here is like my overall career stuff, right? The most important thing, finishing percentage and incident average is relatively low. Lots of podiums, good number of races. I've driven a lot of different things, 510 different combos driven. Like I try a lot of stuff. So we'll kind of get into with, I guess the wins, right? It's like, so this is every car class I have won a race in the order in which I won the first race in that car class. So Mazda won at Lime Rock. I've won at the old Silverstone National layout. This race had Matt Malone in a Mustang. That was that. A bunch of guys junked it in Mazdas, and I won the race. Phoenix in the ARCA car, Lime Rock ARCA car, a total of 43 USF 2000 wins. Picked up a lot of these last season. These are just the ones from last season, so it's 14. I picked up 5 at the Nürburgring. Yeah. It's kind of bread and butter. If I need to inflate my win count, that's where I'm going to do it, I guess. But Legends Road Cup, 24 wins, another 14 of those last season. Oh, okay, yeah, it's 14 and 14. That's right. Okay. A couple VW Beetle wins at Knock Hill. 6 IndyCar wins, including my one last season, one-off fixed sprint gateway, wire to wire. 87s at Martinsville. I passed the leaders coming into turn 1 when they crashed with like a couple to go and just one under caution, I think. Tour Modified, couple wins there. Couple wins in the Pro 4 truck. Grandin and Firebird. 4 wins in the Skippy, 2 at Lime Rock, 1 at Spa, 1 at Navarra. My one and only sprint car win in the 305 at Lima Land. I think the leader like jumped it into the fence or spun or something. 2 wins in the Civic, 1 at Motegi and 1 at Knock Hill. A couple wins in the winged and non-winged Outlaw Micro Sprint. Most of them are winged. A bunch of Millbridge. I've won winged at Kern and non-winged at Chili Bowl. 2 super late model wins. 1 at Wilkesboro, 1 at Sobo. 1 Formula Ford at Road America, another one at Brands Hatch. Bunch of Indy Pro wins. I racked up a bunch of these, climbing iRating at Junior Open Wheel Oval Challenge. Won all 8 starts of that. I think this is non-winged micro sprint Lanier. 2 Clio wins at Navarra because I bought that to run the SCCA runoffs. Winged micro sprints. Dirt Legends. Couple Dirt Legends wins. Pro 2 at Daytona. Finally picked up a win in the GT3, Ferrari GT3 before they retired it. Or, well, not retired it, but took it out of the fixed series. Mid-Ohio. Picked up some Formula Ford wins at Oschersleben. I've done a lot, right? I have 130 some odd career iRacing wins now, the bulk of which are in the last year or so, 133. I like to think that I know good things about racecraft. The USF 2000 is very much a car that you have to be smart with driving because you don't have horsepower to just pull away from people. It's very much if you keep in the draft and be smart, you can win races. I've won a number of races from well far behind just by staying consistent, catching the toe, and making moves at the right time. Capitalizing on that, and just giving it all I had. I'm sure we'll get into those with kind of the stuff I'm planning to do with this channel, is kind of walking through those. I plan on following this up with a video discussing like series to race coming into season 3, whether you're new or returning or a veteran of the sim. Maybe you haven't tried a bunch of things. Maybe you've only run, IndyCar, right? That's all you've done. You got to the point where you run IndyCar and all you run is IndyCar and you want to try something else, right? Like that sort of thing. And I think the things to kind of expect, I have them written out somewhere. Yeah, I'm going to go through like old replays, talk over things, kind of share the story and kind of how I'm working through things, which will be distinctly different depending on how new or old the replay is, going between single and triple monitors. I make that transition at some point, but I think that's also important to like keep in mind when you're reviewing stuff like that. Talking about races of the week, maybe breaking up like techniques to race situations, stuff like if you're put in a certain position on a track, how to kind of navigate that, things like that, inputs, stuff like that, kind of the whys of things. Um, you know, this is a one-off. You see, I got my channel introduction here. My channel introduction is gonna be the longest channel introduction in the history of introductions. And then kind of just suggestions for people looking to climb the license ladders, which I think um, is something that a lot of people very much kind of get funneled into specific paths on and don't really realize just how much iRacing you get without having to buy a single car. I think the biggest thing to come into iRacing with is to not buy a single car. Find a car that you already have and like, and drive that and just buy tracks. I think that's huge, especially with the amount of free content we have at our disposal in the sim now, which is something I'll kind of cover in the buyer's guide next week. I've got some goals that I'm kind of trying to hit myself. IndyCar road course win because I don't have one. An oval fixed win, which doesn't sound likely given the current state of the IndyCar fixed setups on ovals, but we'll just have to see. High strength of field wins, big points races, which may be less likely depending on how I tackle things this season, and what have you. So, if you've made it to the end of this properly and didn't just skip to it, thank you. But I think I'm going to kind of cap off the end of this by showing like iRacing stat graphs, kind of where are things coming from. So let's just cover that real quick, and then I'll get out of here. Try to keep this in an hour if I can. So okay, so we're in iRacing now. So as you see, I have the oval graph pulled up. This is kind of the start of me doing iRacing wise, right? Like this is the thing I do. Spending more time with it. So here's kind of the start of that journey. I want to say around somewhere in here, like right around here or so, probably somewhere in here, maybe March is when I make the move to IndyCar. 37, 50 something. Climb until we get to, my peak a couple weeks ago before my Indy 500 debacle where I had to dodge a car self-spinning, or who hit the wall unforced off 4 all by themselves, Beyblade, and I got a speeding penalty and unfortunately completely unraveled my 500. But if I can do this, anyone can. I will probably dig into iRacing, or sorry, not iRacing, iRating being completely irrelevant because of just how variable the sim is in terms of how you experience it, especially for someone like me. Whereas if we get to, sports car, since this license got introduced, would have been when Legends Road Cup came out, I believe. This is Legends Road Cup. I've gained 1,000 iRating Legends Road Cup. This is not representative of my skill in other cars, like at all. And I think that if you want to pump a number, go for it. Green is good, as we like to say. But this is not the end all and be all of your ability and your worth as a driver on iRacing or even just in general, right? Like just making the stat line go up is not necessarily indicative of the things you learned in the journey you make across the line. Formula car, this is basically just road to Indy, right? USF 2000, Indy Pro 2000. Good bit of IndyCar in here. Even still, most of it is USF 2000, right? This is 2000 iRating that I gained basically farming USF 2000 by being a really good driver in a very small driver pool. And that's kind of how you can pump this number. You pick your slots. You lead lights to flag, wire to wire all the time. You can do this. Like this is not necessarily impressive. I think the reason that this would have been the start of this season, this would have been the end of it. All of this was like top split IndyCar oval fixed. right? It's the quality of the starts you make. I put in lots of starts, lots of wins, whatever. Like this stuff down here is not quite as I like the incident per race thing and the average, like, just consistency, right? I have yet to win an oval fixed race. All these guys, like, I've made it to top 10 in points without winning a single race. I have yet to win at a single oval fixed race. It's not even like that I haven't gone out and run a split where I could. It's just I haven't. So, anyways, that's kind of all I've got here. I hope that this is not astronomically long. I'm gonna keep it within an hour, so that's starters, especially because I was kind of off the cuff rolling through things. Um, Appreciate anybody who decided to watch all of this, kind of get a feel for what I'm doing here. A lot of it's just gonna be review, right? I don't plan on doing like me commentating over a race while I'm driving. I don't think that's a saturated market. Not that it shouldn't be, and I think that it's a different perspective. But I think for me, I want to look at things from like an outside lens, kind of look things in hindsight, learn things that way, talk about how to learn those things, what you could kind of do to get better at very, very niche things like wreck avoidance and what you can do to position your car to maybe not get into wrecks in the first place, kind of just being more cognizant of your surroundings and what have you. But yeah, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one when the next one actually happens. I'm not gonna put it on a timeline or anything. We're just gonna see what happens. So thanks for watching. Yeah. Specialize if you want to specialize, broaden your horizons if you want to broaden your horizons, but remember, always have fun because that's what this is about at the end of the day. Have a good one.